Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sage Dragon Book Show. I am your host, Shaquana. This is a show that I do that celebrates books and all things. I got a new one. It's new for me. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's called GLAM: Galleries, Libraries, Archives, and Museums. I don't know how I never heard of that acronym. I was on Substack. It's becoming my new favorite digital space. It seems like there's just fresher thoughts and perspectives there. And I saw someone post that in addition to more STEM celebration, we need more glam celebration. And that led me to realize that this show is a glam show. We think of glam as makeup and all that stuff, but this is more of that cultural glam. So glam. Anyhow, I hope everywhere you are all doing well. It's Saturday, March 7th. If you're listening now, um, this is Women's History Month. Tomorrow is Spring Forward, so yay, daylight savings. We're getting closer to spring, and tomorrow is also International Women's Day. So much going on. We are also reeling with the start of the US Israel invasion war with Iran. And that's a terrible war. No war is good, but it just seemed like it came out of nowhere. So we're all just reeling with so many things. And I also know that many of us are holding space for loved ones that are dealing with illnesses and sicknesses and mental health challenges. So, this show is about reading and books, but I'm a whole being and a whole person. So, while I'm on here, I also want to share love and light to all of us during these difficult times. So, once again, thank you for joining. If you know people who like books, who like reading, who have book clubs, please like, share the show. And you can find me on YouTube, Sage Dragon Books. Let's get to today's episode. Thank you to the Real HD for helping bring this show out to everyone. I'm really excited about this because I love poetry and there's I'm going to be doing a lot of different type of content this month for Women's History Month and for um, for March in general. But I wanted to start with the first week being something light and uplifting and positive. And what better way to do that through poetry? And I read it, I write it. I think it's a powerful art form. So, this episode, I'm going to be sharing some poets from all over the world, some in the United States, some in different parts of the world, Iran, Palestine, Jamaica. So, let's get to it. So, this is going to be 10 poets who I think that you should check out. And if you know of any of these poets already, drop it in the comments now or the future. And please let me know of some other women poets that you think would be great for me to know about. All right, so let me start first off. First is, um, and when I'm talking collections. So I'll spotlight a collection, the name of the book or the name of the poem, and then, of course, the poet, the artist. So, this first one that I'm sharing is called Beautiful and Useless by Kim Min Jiang. And see if we can show a picture. Yep. So, that is Kim Min Jiang. And um, she is a poet that I saw this in a indie bookstore that unfortunately just closed a couple of months ago here in Rochester, New York. But I was just looking around. I think it might have been last year during National Poetry Month. I wanted to add some new poetry books to my collection, and I saw it and it caught my eye. And the book owner also said it was good. So here's a description. She exposes funny and contradictory riffs that appear in language of everyday circumstance. So when I was reading up on the poet. She's a South Korean artist and writer. And what a lot of people have said about this book, about this collection, and it's true. It's not, it's called Beautiful and Useless, but beautiful is a play on words because it's actually satire. So a lot of her poetry is breaking apart how Korean people and women are supposed to be like real proper. And she's using the language purposely. She said ugly, but the poetry is really sharp. So that's kind of the irony of it. She doesn't want to make language be so pretty all the time. She uses curse words and slang, and it's a way to say, to undermine authority by displaying the absurd nature of gender expectations. So it's got some really good, interesting poetry in there. Um, I like Mass Shipment of Spring Greens. What was the other one that I read? Oh, my favorite one so far, I had read it the other night. And this is why I was saying that even though she's saying she's doesn't know how to be beautiful in her words, she only knows ugly. This first verse, she she was talking about, I'll just read. It's called Women Rise at Night. On a night when floating milky jellyfish whooshed like white button-up shirts that jumped into the sea, the bell rang and the wind blew. Snow fell, but the milky jellyfish that were like white button-up shirts that jumped into the sea were a bit too big to be snowflakes. So I was like, wow, that's a lot of imagery. And it goes on. It's kind of a long poem, but she's a really good poet, and I would recommend you checking her out um, to learn more about South Korean culture and to get some great poetry in your life. So next up is, um, if I have the book, I'm showing you the collection. So next up is called Fox Woman Get Out. And I think I also got this from an indie bookstore. It was a different day. I was shopping and saw this book along with another book that I talked to you all about called Protest Kitchen. But this, once again, covers. So this is Fox Woman Get Out by India Lena Gonzalez.
Show it again. One
And
second.
okay.
1 second. Okay.
Okay. Should I have done that with the other one too? I just
No,
realized. Okay,
no,
well,
because we're showing the books in the graphics, but
yeah.
since you
Okay.
highlighted it, since you put it up, I just wanted to make sure it was clear.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, India Lena Gonzalez. This is her debut of poetry, very lyrical. And when I opened it and I was like skimming through some of the poems, deciding if I wanted to purchase it, I just thought about Intozaki Shange because I like how lyrical and rhythmic the language is in a lot of these poems. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to get this. So she is a poet, editor, and artist. She graduated from Columbia University and received her master's from NYU Creative Arts. And she's professionally trained dancer, choreographer, and actor. When years ago, I published a zine. I don't know if I'm pronouncing them right. When I was back, this is a long time ago, when I was back in high school. And I had a name I used to go by called Diaminiges. And I took the word dance and I took the word image, combined it, and it was Diaminiges. Because I always thought that there was something powerful about dance and combining it with lyrics. And I think that's another reason why I loved For Color Girls, the play and the choreo poem, because that's what Intozaki was doing too. There's something there with movement and imagery. And so I like to see multimedia artists who do that. And I feel like India Lena is doing that with the words of this. And she's also an indigenous author. So, because if you listen to the description, it says traveling from the corporal to the cosmic, from life to death and back again. Fox Woman Get Out is a full throated performance of humanity in search of truth, ancestry, and artistic authenticity, moving through themes of lineage, twinship, femininity, masculinity, reclaiming of indigeneity, dance, gender roles, and longing. Gonzalez's poems are crescendo on the page. So that's a really great description. I want to make sure that I'm clarifying where I thought I read that she was had native, but I want to make sure that I'm correct in that because I read so many people's backgrounds. Oh, look at this. See, I knew I was I'm looking at one of the um descriptions, and it says, to me, what India Lena Gonzalez has made is an exquisite, beyond a text revelation, performance sounding that touches in me Jane Cortez, Amiri Baraka, and Intozaki Shange. Because that's who came to mind. Just as I was reading it, I was like, wow, this reminds me of her style. And this was something that was written in. I have a video to play that um, gives you a little bit more of a flavor of the author. So can we show that? Just a couple of minutes of it.
Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you with us this evening. With all that's going on in the world these days, I want to start off by thanking you all for joining us, and I hope everyone is treating themselves and others with tenderness. My name is India Lena Gonzalez, and I'm the features editor of Poets and Writers magazine. And today we are celebrating the brilliant debut poets included in our January-February inspiration issue. Now, our annual Debut Poets feature is in its 21st year running, and it's included in the first issue of every year. For this roundup, we highlight 10 authors whose first full-length poetry collections were published in the prior 12 months. We ask the poets a series of questions, ranging from the conception of their collections, to what influences their written work, to the practicalities of being a writer, such as how they find time to write, how they went about structuring their books, and more. This time around, our 10 dazzling debut poets created collections wherein the delicate ecosystem of the poem is carefully tended to. In their responses to our questions, they remind us to be patient with our growth and to honor the time it may take for our creative vision to align with our skill set. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of listening to and sharing Zoom space with Esther Lynn, author of Cold Thief Place, published by Alice James Books, Nadia Alexis, author of Beyond the Watershed, published by Cabin Carey Press, Lena Moses Schmidt, author of True Mistakes, published by University of Arkansas Press, and Sean Ballard, author of Second Nature, published by BOA Editions. I am overjoyed to have you all joining us today, and our hearty congratulations on the publication of your debuts. Some quick housekeeping notes to keep in
Okay,
mind.
so we can stop there, producer. Thank you. So I would like to recommend that everyone who's interested check out New Ways of Seeing Debut Poets Virtual Reading. That was on YouTube. I can't play the whole thing, but I wanted to provide you with a snippet because even though the poets that were described in that introduction sounds like great poets to look up. I couldn't find, I was looking for a clip of her reading from Fox Woman Get Out, couldn't find it. And it just goes to show you there we need to have more archives of poetry out there. Maybe YouTube isn't the most biggest audience for it, but I'd like to see more of that footage because I couldn't find for some of these poets. I couldn't find clips of them. If I found it, I showed it, but it this was the only one that I saw of her in action. So check her out more. Next up is Recovery from Unusual at Attitudes by Sarah Collins. And I saw this in Writers and Books. It's a local bookstore here in Rochester, New York, and they also are like I believe, a nonprofit organization that focuses on, literature, and they do workshops and a lot of cool things. But they also have a bookstore in their space, and um, I saw this book, Sarah Collins, and she is a Rochesterian. She lives here, and I think that was cool. Born and raised in central New York to Jamaican parents who immigrated to the States in the early 1980s. And she's a poet and she's a copyright editor. And this collection is about mental illness and her conversion to Christianity. So I was drawn in with how personal her poetry was about her mental healing journey and also her spiritual path. And she calls it recovery from unusual attitudes because a lot of the poems um, have to do with like co- drawing a parallel between mental health and altitude, like flying. So in the introduction, it says a dangerous condition in aircraft operations in which the flight attitude or airspeed of an aircraft is outside of the normal bounds of operation for which it's designed. This may result loss of control of the aircraft and sometimes the total loss of the aircraft itself. Unusual attitudes typically occur during poor weather conditions with low visibility. However, they can also occur under ordinary circumstances due to distraction, disorientation, inexperience, turbulence, or instrument failure. Typically, entering an unusual attitude is not intentional. The first step in recovering from an unusual attitude is recognizing that one has occurred. So that the use of attitude, we normally associate it with your disposition, which is the mental health piece. But she starts off talking about it and how it applies to aircraft. It's kind of a clever piece of the way she constructed some of her writing, but it's very personal. She's a very good poet, and I don't know. I may try to find her and see if I can do an interview one of these days, since she's local. A Black woman poet, Sarah Collins. So check out her piece, her poetry. Yes, like or share, comment. Thank you. Okay, next up, let's keep this going, is Loves of Our Lives by Josie Barker. I was in Barnes and Nobles around the holidays and said, let me see what new poetry is, the commercial bookstores are. And I saw this book. saw the cover, love, a romantic, and was like, okay, poems for hopeful hearts. So what I liked was that when I was reading the description, it says it was talking about love, six types of love: familiar love, romantic love, toxic, friendships, self love, and lost love. So that's the way the book is categorized. And she's got poems in each of these. And the other thing that's cool about her is her name is Josie Balker. She was first a broadcaster and a voiceover artist and poet, but she built a closet and she started reading her poetry and I guess posting it and went viral. And I think it's so cool how, some of our younger people, millennials, figure out ways, innovative ways to get art forms out there that are not so commercially, accepted. And this was a way for her to get a lot of visibility with her poetry. So I thought that was cool. Here, we have a clip to show that speaks to more of that. Can we show that, please?
Loves of our lives. Please welcome to this social broadcaster, poet, and New York Times best-selling author, Josie Balka.
Good to have you here. I'm so happy to be here. Josie, we said off the top there, your videos have garnered literally hundreds of millions of views. From your perspective, what do you think it is that's drawing people in?
I think because I write things really simply. In school, I always struggled with like science and math, and I know how it feels to just not understand things even though you really want to. So my rule for myself when I'm writing is write it so simply put that even if somebody hasn't been through it, they'd be able to have empathy toward it.
Oh, wow.
And just, write things in a way that anybody would understand. You don't leave going, can I interpret that in another way? You're just like, oh, I know exactly what she was talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you actually, prior to taking off on social media, you hosted a radio show for a number of years, and that is the reason that you actually built this studio that we see you recording in your basement.
Yeah.
So walk us through what happened.
Yeah, I was on a radio show up until this past November, and because I loved doing voiceover and stuff, I decided to build a voiceover booth in the basement guest room closet, which is actually the best room in our house, so I took it over. But it's been great. Like, obviously, I started out doing voiceovers in this little closet, and then I decided one day that I was gonna maybe read a poem that I'd written and put it out there. But it's cool because I was able to set up a little piano in there as well, so I'm able to like play all the music behind my poetry too.
Wow.
So it's cool to just kind of produce the whole thing, and it makes me feel like I still have a job.
You kind of touched on your approach to writing poetry, but I'm wondering, when you're sitting down to write, do you consider the audience? Are you thinking about where it's coming from you? What's your whole process?
I feel like sometimes it's a bit of a detriment how much I consider the audience because I just want people to like what I'm writing. And the more people that are listening and reading, the more I care about them liking it. Yeah. But sometimes when you're trying too hard to impress people, it doesn't go the way that you want it to. Yeah. So I'm trying to actually consider the audience less, if possible. But it's hard not to because there's just so many eyes, you know?
Of course, of course. Well,
Yeah, so Josie Balker, I thought that was really vulnerable of her to admit how much she writes for the audience, because a lot of artists toe the line with that. Many of them will say they write for themselves. It maybe it differs, but I just think uh, some of the younger artists and poets are more transparent about how much they're trying to connect with audiences. But the poems are really good. I like her poems about friendships and lost love, and I had been taking my time with it. So Josie Balker. Next up is I joined the Poetry Foundation last year, and every month I get magazines with poetry in it. And it helps me like discover all these different um, award-winning poets. And that's how I learned about this author, this poet. Her name is Shireen Perosia Madone, a biracial Indian American poet, educator, and editor. And she is, very well celebrated for her poetry. So the poem she that was featured in Poetry Magazine's October 25 issue is called Anahita Without a Face. It's a very powerful poem. After a relief in Kermanshah, Iran, excuse me, of the goddess Anahita, King Khosrow I, and Ahura Mazda god. So we have the Poetry Foundation has the poem on their website, and we can hear a clip of her reciting it. So can we play that, please?
This is Shireen Madden, and I'm recording from Brooklyn, New York. This is my poem, Anahita Without a Face. You stood beside our God, you anointed a human king, and yet you were forever rendered the shortest of the bunch. You wore a nice hat, a robe of uncertain color. You brought with you a perennial fog, as the weather couldn't decide what to be for you. In the temple were tuberoses smoking on coals, a gold light battened to the floors, bowls overflowing with limes. Prayers were prayed in hope of rainfall, surviving battle, and infinite plastic baggies worth of breast milk. Anahita without a face, you left great fires behind when you departed. You left the sunrise and all the hours after. You left like you were deported. You left us as heretics. You left fatwas. You left an anesthetized people. You left your fan club clamoring, as great in bigness as all these waters which flow upon the earth. We hope retirement has been kind to you. We will tend our own waters now, our droughts and floods, our seas of plastic.
Yeah, so that is a beautiful poem. I was trying to think about the meaning of it, and I did some research, and that is a goddess in Middle Eastern culture. And I think they're talking about a lot of the erasure that started happening and devastation when even currently that's going on. So she's a great poet to check out, Shireen Madon. Okay. Next up is Doreen Tator. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. I I've been I have a piece on my Substack where I also have talked about all of these same poets. But way back around the 90s and the 2000s, poetry was getting some commercial success due to some popular platforms like Def Poetry Jam. You had the movie Love Jones, and you also had some arts movements like in New York City. You had like this Black arts movement tied with slash neo soul. You had the New Eurekans movement, and these were places, literally, they had places like Brooklyn Moon and New Eurekan Cafe and Lyricist Lounge and different universities, Hofstra, we did stuff, and various colleges, and they would have spaces for diverse poets and spoken word artists. So at the time, there was a Palestinian artist named Suhir Hamad, and she would talk about the plight of being Palestinian American. And a lot of her poetry also focused on, after 9/11, the ways that the Muslim community was being heavily targeted in New York. And I just remember, after all these years, some of her poems, like the fact that she was just raising awareness about Palestinian culture, what was happening in Palestine way back in the early 2000s. I always wondered what happened to her. And then I also wanted to see if there were more poets from Palestine, women poets. So I looked this woman up, and that's how I found out about Doreen. Now, Doreen's story is that she wrote a poem back in 2016, so that's 10 years ago, called Resist My People Resist, and ended up getting arrested for it by Israel police. It's probably hard for us Westerners and those of us living in the United States to fathom writing a poem and getting arrested. Babe, what do you think about that?
Well, this land had about a 250-year experiment with preventing people of melanated background from reading and writing.
Right.
So when you align that with what this poet is going through or went through, you can see how, the world still needs to, mature in a lot of ways and embrace, more of what melanated people have to offer.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's true, now that you say it that way. Because I'm like, wow, she got arrested for this, but she was under house arrest and she had a trial and so forth. So do we have the video?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, we have a video to talk about.
All
this.
right, here we go.
Okay.
I'll start the video over, and perhaps because there's no sound with the words, maybe you can read along with it.
Oh, okay.
People who are just listening can get what's going on.
Okay. So it says this year that she's convicted of Palestinian couple. Her crime, writing a poem.
אני לא יודעת, אני לא יכולה להגיד שום דבר. למדתי באוניברסיטה הפתוחה, התחלתי, לא סיימתי.
Doreen uploaded a resistance on Facebook and along with photos of Palestinians. Resist My People Resist the Introduction language that Ford was arrested and then overnight he was under house arrest for 2 years and has been prohibited from publishing works or accessing the internet.
In essence, what the court has done has buried the right of freedom of speech in its decision.
More than 150 American literary figures called for her to be freed. Israel says she'll be sentenced this month, but Tator plans to appeal. Will she be in prison for writing poetry? So this is an older clip. I didn't have time. I was trying and then I was running out of time to find out more about where she is now because this was a long time ago and I'm curious about that. So I'm going to continue to do some research on her and find out like what happened and to her. And I see that Alice Walker was one of the people featured in the video. And I know Alice Walker has been very outspoken against the oppression of Palestinian people for years. Her and Angela Davis have been, um, and they have really been people that have tried to connect the dots of why even people who are like Black Americans or from other backgrounds should be concerned. Because I know a lot of times we're feeling like, well, we've got our own struggles here, but they connect the dots of how some of the oppression, first of all, they're people and an injustice somewhere is an injustice anywhere. So there's that basic humanitarian level. But then what they also do is show how systemic some of these policies are. So I really want to learn about the plights of other women around the world. And one way that I'm doing it is through the poetry and the art of these different cultures and societies as a way to really understand their plight and then hopefully in some ways help them. Um, to that, because of the the emotions I was feeling about the U.S. Israel war in Iran, I also wanted to learn more about Iranian women and their artistry and their poetry. So I came across this beautiful video that I wanted to share. It's called Iranian Artists Support the Revolution Through Design and a Visual Poem of Empowerment. So can we play that, please? It's like a bonus.
دیگه وقتشه. دیگه وقتشه. آزادی. دیگه وقتشه. زندگی. مادر باهاته. اینجا باش. مادر باهاته. بیدار باش. بیا جمع بشیم. دیگه وقتشه. آزادی. عشق من. ایران من.
Women, Life, Freedom. I thought that was really a powerful imagery. And I was just looking this up as I was listening to that. As of March 6, 2026, over 1,332 people in Iran have been killed in U.S. Israel attacks, with over 4,000 wounded. And there was a bombing of a school a couple of days ago that killed 165 children. It was a girls' school. So when I wanted to show this video that was produced before that, everyone wants to be free. You know, everyone deserves to have freedom. It's just really devastating, and it angers me. I know that in previous times, Americans, you know, we protested and we stood up for this and we talked about it and we made signs, you know, in the 60s when Vietnam was happening. People like celebrities and certain public service people spoke out against it. It seems like there's so much silence happening now, and that really bothers me too. Uh, so let's keep going. Um, Next up is um, a poet. Now, most of these poets that I have shared, I feel are not as celebrated and as known. And that was part of why I chose these particular ones. There'll be other episodes where others who are more maybe famous for their poetry are featured. But this is an exception. Faro Farrokhzad was the first Iranian poet to promote the culture of women in poetry. Expressing her thoughts on discrimination and inequality, she described Iranians' women untold suffering. So she's like the mother of poetry for Iran. And I spent some time reading some of her poetry, you know, while I was preparing for this show. And I was like, wow, was an incredible poet. And she lived a very, at the time, you know, I would say like different lifestyle than the average Iranian woman. I have a clip that I can play from a translator who is the poem is called I Pity the Garden. It's a long poem, so I didn't want to show the entire thing, but I'll put a clip up and then you can go to YouTube, look up the poem, I Pity the Garden by Faro Foxod. Shole Wope, who's a translator, is reading it, and you can enjoy the whole poem. But can we show a piece of it, please?
Blast. Our neighbors plant bombs and machine guns instead of flowers in their garden soil. They cover their ponds hiding bags of gunpowder. The school children fill their backpacks with tiny bombs. Our garden is dizzy. I fear the age that has lost its heart, the idleness of so many hands, the alienation in so many faces. I'm like a schoolchild madly in love with her geometry books. I am forlorn and imagine it is possible to take the garden to a hospital. I imagine. And the garden's heart has swollen in the heat of the sun. Its mind slowly drains of its lush memories.
I Pity the Garden. And it's so relevant to what's happening, what just happened this week. I was just reading this article on UNICEF, and it was published 2 days ago, and it's called "The Brutality of War Measured in Children's Lives as Hostilities Escalate in Iran," and it was referencing the 168 girls killed when a strike hit this girls' elementary school in southern Iran, and they indicate that the school children were only 7 and 12, ages between 7 and 12. It's just, you're enraged. You feel so many different feelings and you wish you could do more. But that is, I'm going to get more into these. I loved putting this together. I felt like so enriched with learning about all these different poets and reading their poetry, and it feels like it's such an activity that is so underrated in our society, but it really enriches you when you read good poetry. Okay. We're winding down here, but we still got a couple of great ones. So next up is Sophia Sinclair, How to Say Babylon. Um, I love Jamaica. Been to Jamaica a couple of times. Haven't been enough. Went the first time when I was in college for college break. And since 2023, I've been immersing myself in Caribbean literature. I read so much. A matter of fact, I just started last night a book called A Pleasant View by a Trinidadian author. But in learning about I'm trying to get my words together. I saw someone post on Facebook a couple of years ago an article about this book, How to Say Babylon. And then it was getting a lot of uh, great push. So I got the book, I listened to it, and it was incredible. So Sophia Sinclair, she's a poet. Her first collection is called Cannibal, but How to Say Babylon is actually her memoir, and it's about her growing up in Rastafari culture. And it's so honest. And she talks about the way that Jamaica was impacted by, colonialism and oppression, and how it impacted her parents and the way that they were able to. Her father was a musician, and he was a really good reggae artist and rock and very strict Rastafarian man. And a lot of the policies that was happening and practices, brutal, colonial, racist, systemic practices oppressed the people of Jamaica, especially in like the 70s and the 80s. And it made it really hard for the men to provide for their families the way that it happened to Black men in the United States. So some of that also impacted the way that he raised his children. And but she also talks about just Jamaica, and she got into writing poetry thanks to her mother. She had an amazing mother, and who like guided her and her brothers and sisters and educated them. So she ends up being able to go to college finally. She talks about all of this in the books. Matter of fact, I won't give it away. Read How to Say Babylon. You will not be disappointed. It was incredible. I also got to interact with her on a book Zoom a couple of years ago. So, How to Say Babylon is, I listened to it on audio. And because she read it and she's a poet, I felt like, I told her this, like I was listening to one long poem, even though it's her memoir. Very deeply touching, personal, and she has a really great voice. So that was a beautiful book, and I really enjoyed learning and reading more about Jamaican culture, Rastafarian culture, which I'm very interested in, and it was really a great book. So shout out to that. And oh, actually, we have a clip here to show.
Home. Have I forgotten it? Wild conch shell dialect, black apostrophe curled tight on my tongue. I'm born and raised in Montego Bay, Jamaica. I lived there my whole life until I started undergrad. I started writing poetry, I think in earnest when I was like 12 years old. But I come from a very creative family, a musical family. And I think my passion for poetry probably started with my mother. I was very interested in not only understanding the sounds and the music of poetry, but also trying to find my own music by writing poetry. Hands. Out here, the surf rewrites our silences. This smell of ocean may never leave me. Our humble life or the sea, a dark page I am trying to turn. Cannibal is kind of a record of all these different, I think, fractured modes of exile. Exile of being a Caribbean person, living in a place that you have now come to call home, but is also a place of unbelonging. And also exploring the exile of living in a Black woman's body in the world. I'm writing from a sense of rebellion, a little bit linguistic rebellion, or a desire to dismantle the language I've been given while also sometimes being drunk on it. The rusty sunset of this wonder, this smashed archipelago, our wild sea grape kingdom overrun, gold and belonging in all its glory. So when I had the opportunity to come to USC, I mean, not only is it the best PhD program in creative writing, but for me, the weather and being close to an ocean, being able to go and sit in front of the sea for me is hard to beat.
That clip is from USA. I was USC. Apparently, she was living in California for a while. I do remember, though, when she first went to the US, because she talked about this in her memoir, she was in some other one of these small towns. I'm trying to remember where it was, where she got her bachelor's and was miserable. But she ended up in Arizona. Um, like the cold and all of that just was not working. And it really, the last couple of years, because I've been reading so much Caribbean books, and a lot of the themes tend to be migration and migrating to the UK, to the Americas, in between different Caribbean islands, people moving for safety, for trying to live a better life. It gave me a much deeper empathy for the plight of the migrants. Because when I hear and read these stories and I put myself in their shoes, I can't not have a level of empathy for why people feel like they have to leave their places and their countries to come to other places. Especially also when I learn and realize that some Western places have played a role in the destabilization of those places. So you play these roles, the places are not able to have um, the infrastructure to allow those places, those people to thrive. And then you say, don't come here. You can't come here. They might have had a chance to thrive in their countries if some of these policies didn't happen. And I don't feel like we talk about that as much when we talk about, well, they can't all be here. And why do they want to come here? Why do you think that anyone wants to come and leave their home and their family anyway? So she is an incredible author, and I want to get Cannibal. I loved How to Say Babylon, so I do plan to get that book. They do this I think it's called Calabash. They do this festival every 2 years in Jamaica. And they did it last year. So I guess 2027 would be the next one with that devastating hurricane. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it, but I would love to be able to go one year. Jamaica has some amazing writers and poets. There's this writer named Kai Miller, and I'm going to feature him at some point too, and his poetry and writing is incredible. So shout out to Sophia. So I'm gonna move on to one more poet named Heed Ard- Ardrich. She's a Native American poet, a member of the Turtle Mountain Band, and she's the author of several poetry collections. And I'm making a conscious effort to read more books and poetry by indigenous people, indigenous to this land and other places, but definitely I want to increase my exposure to Native culture. I feel like we've been so robbed of that, and it's been on purpose. So we have to go out of our way, and I'll be doing another episode later in the month on some ways that we can connect more to Native arts and culture and even our own ancestry. But I came across this poet, and she the book that I really want to get is called Cell Traffic. And I see that it's an older book. It was published in, what was that, 20 um like 2014, or but it's one of her older 2017. So it's not her latest. I think her latest here is called Big Bully in 2020. But Cell Traffic caught my eye because the concept of it is about how our cells migrate. And I have a clip here where she'll describe a little bit more about it. But I think that because I have this background in STEM, I like to see art that merges science and art, that they bring those worlds together. I got to be a part of a really cool project years ago when I was living in Baltimore, and it was called Bad Blood. I was working at Morgan State University's School of Public Health. And at the time, there was a big anniversary around the Tuskegee syphilis experiment that happened, that the United States committed against Black men when they withheld treatment just to see how they would react when they had syphilis. So there was a huge anniversary. John Hopkins University wanted to collaborate with Morgan, and there were a series of a weekend of activities, and it included art exhibits, a symposium to talk about the legacy of the Tuskegee experiment. But what was really powerful was this art exhibit called Bad Blood. And that exhibit had traveled around the country, and this artist showed through visual ways what happened, what was going on when the scientists, or mad scientists, were doing this devastating experiment. So anyway, that reminded me of the power of being able to combine artistry with science. And it's another thing that I'm surprised I'm not seeing more of, seeing how a deadly virus transformed our world 6 years ago. So cell therapy, cell traffic, we have a clip to show. So can we show that, please?
So I might read a little bit more about the Bowen poems. But Cell Traffic, the new poems, have to do with a subject, biological subject that some of you might be familiar with, maternal fetal stem cell traffic, in which they've discovered that the cells from pregnancies move in between the maternal body and the fetal body, so that you could be formed of cells from your older siblings, from pregnancies your mother had that didn't actually come to be your siblings, from your grandparents even, they think. So there's a lot of trafficking of these cells, and they move around your body, and they do wonderful things. But they're also, like all life, not entirely benign. They're also implicated in autoimmune disorders. But recently, one of the studies that I looked at that was so interesting is women who have myocardial infarction. Did I say that right? I'm not a doctor. I just play one. They found that the male fetal stem cells from one of their offspring are repairing their hearts. So it's just, it's this wonderful, weird thing. And I thought it was a good metaphor for many things, and I began the project. I dedicated the book to my sisters, Louise, Lise, and Angie, telling them that they are part of me, perhaps literally. And one of the other nice things about having a new and selected is that they put an introduction on it, and I got to read what somebody smart, the poet Dean Rader, said about my work, and it was one of the nicest moments of my life. I'm not going to be humble about it. It felt really good that he wrote, several pages about all the poems I've published in my whole life. And one of the things that he said is that the poems love the reader, and that made me feel really good. They asked for participation, and I just thought, yeah, that's true. I'm really not doing this just for myself. So that said, some of the poets that I quote to begin Cell Trafficker, Walt Whitman, and the line that he says, "For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you." And then I also quoted a science writer who said that, in fact, some researchers now think that most of us, if not all, are chimeras of one kind or another. Far from being purebred individuals composed of a single genetic cell line, our bodies are cellular mongrels teeming with cells from our mothers, maybe even from grandparents and siblings. And in Ojibwe, there's a saying, "Indenewe amaganidok," which means all my relations. And I liked how those things tied together. So there's several sections in the book, and the first one is chimeras. And the only thing you need to know for this poem is that there's something called the thrifty gene that makes some people able to hold weight, whereas others can't. And I thought there should be a gene for luck. I was hoping they'd find that someday. I'd like that. This is for the painter Jim Denemy, a Siganak. Thrifty gene, lucky gene. Rabbit glances at the moon, bites thorns and ice, survives. Plush with winter stores, lusty winter boredom. The thrifty gene makes sure our bodies warm through to spring. Our ancestors lived fat and happy enough to pass on storage technology that beats zipper lock plastic, pads us belly, hip, thigh. Hard to thank them for this gift, though they gave us luck too. Spiral of fate, chain of code. Luck genes must match up with thrift there somewhere. Placemat at the Chinese says rabbit, luckiest of all signs. Most fearful too, I'm told.
Yeah, I like that one. That had me thinking about a lot of things. One, spring is coming. I know for me, I tend to hold on to some extra weight during the winter, and it's an ancestral thing. But it was really something to think about the fact that that there's all this migration with cells. That's a little sci-fi. What do you think, babe, about that?
Which one? You said a couple of points.
Oh, the fact that our cells are not just individual, but they could be a combination of different life forces.
Yeah, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson and Carl Jung, they both of them attribute a lot of studies to the relevance of the DNA material and how that impacts your development, your life,
Mhm.
how like if there's a great pianist and then the offspring is a great pianist and then their offspring is a great pianist, it's often in the genes. It's often in
Yeah.
the genetic makeup. So if your father is a great athlete and then you become a good athlete and then your son becomes a good athlete or daughter, it's
Mhm.
usually a genetic thing, and
Yeah.
you should treasure it. You should
Yeah.
treasure it. Yeah.
So cell traffic. Well, that does it. Those are the poets that we featured with today's episode. Um, I hope you will look up some of these poets. Spend some time during International Women's Day tomorrow, looking up a poet or two, reading their poetry, maybe purchasing it and supporting them, and just kind of thinking about the women in your life and in the world, and how we can make it better for them. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Bye.